Devon, and this is Tracy. So we'll do some brief introductions and then get into it.
So, have my notes with me because I need a crash. My name is Tracy Midulla. I am the creative director for Crab Devil. I've been here a couple of times, and I know some of you from my position as the creative director and founder of Tampa's projects. Devon, you want to?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit more of my biography than I generally give because I think it's relevant to what we're talking about here today. I'm a Tampa native. Tracy and I actually have been hanging out together since about the 7th grade, I think, and have worked in various projects throughout the years. I'm a graduate of USF School of Fine Arts. Back before there was a BFA program, I have a BA in art in sculpture and photography from USF. After that, I went on into the theatrical production industry. I did scenic design and production, building stage sets and props, and worked in theme parks and casinos and resorts and things like that all over the place. And shortly after September 11th, I kind of had first there was no work in that industry, and I sort of had a change of heart myself. I went back to school to become a paramedic, and then through the fire academy, and I've been a fire captain with Hillsborough County Fire Rescue. I've been with Hillsborough County for going on 18 years now. So that's all to say that, I literally kind of wear a lot of hats. And relevant to this discussion is the kind of the problem that we're presenting here. Teaching Tampa to fish, creating critical mass. The idea being, how do we support an arts community in our city that is sustainable and viable, and where people have paying work in the arts. So that's kind of my story of how I've tried to cobble together a living out of being an artist and finding other ways to kind of support myself and have all these different side hustles going on. Tracy can kind of give you a similar story on her end, and we can talk a little bit about what we're doing to address this issue.
Look at him taking my notes, buddy. So, as the nonprofit person here, as many of you are, it's my job to tell you about the challenges that we face in this community. And there's always a risk of sounding really negative when you start off with all the challenges. So I'm going to try and choose my words wisely here. One of the things that we need to do as a community is we need to have more of our collectors buying more local art. And I don't want to say that we don't do that, because I know that we have a lot of collectors that buy local art, and we really appreciate that. The other thing that I would really like to urge most of you to do here is to get your city to buy more local art from our artists. And we also want to focus on things like the fact that we don't have enough large organizations like hotels and resorts and office buildings and law firms that could all be buying more local art, right? And supporting more of our local artists. There are other, and there are reasons for this, and that's because in Tampa we have so many people that are working in the arts, but very few of the artists that we celebrate are working just as artists. And even those that are in academia, right? They have these wonderful jobs and they're working in research universities, but they still have to go to work every day. They have to prepare their lectures, they have to do their studio visits with their students. They've got the best jobs in the arts, a lot of people think, right? But they still don't get to put all of their work into making art, selling art, and pushing themselves forward just as artists. The other thing that we face in this community that I've seen in the last 11 years is that we have a lack of radical inclusivity with our artists. We tend to highlight some of the same artists over and over again. Those are some of the artists that have the leg up because they are in academia or they're already totally immersed in the community. So we want to try and focus a little bit more on solving the problem of radical inclusivity. We also need to lift each other up more as a community. I've been running Tampa's projects for 11 years now, and when I started it, I saw so much competition in the community where people were fighting for the same things, happen in the community, but specifically one of the things that Crab Devil is trying to do is to see rising tides raise all boats, right? So those are our major challenges. And I'm going to let Devon tell you about the strategy.
So what we've kind of identified, the way that a strong art community gets built is kind of a three-legged school. There's been a lot of efforts over the years in identifying the benefits that an arts community brings to a city in terms of economic impact and those kinds of things. My issue with a lot of those efforts is it always seems kind of like a wag the dog initiative to me. There's this idea that if we go out and put up a bunch of sculptures, then the artists will come. You know, it doesn't really function that way. But if you're going to have a great baseball team, you need to have a great farm team. You need to support and cultivate your local talent, which is what we're kind of working on here. But so the three parts of this stool that we're talking about, Tracy and Neil have both been operating in two of those respects for quite a few years now. That being the nonprofit galleries and the gallery support system that Tracy works in, and then the kind of charitable philanthropic organizations like Neil works in, and also county grants, state monies to support artists. What we haven't seen to date is viable for-profit efforts in the arts that can pay a living wage to artists full-time work to produce their own artwork. So that's where Crab Devil comes in. There are 9 founders of Crab Devil, of which I'm one, Tracy's one, Neil is one, and each of us kind of represent one of those 3 legs of the stool. I've been running a for-profit company for the last 13 years or so, building commercial interiors, furniture, design work of that nature, called Live Work Studios. We've done a lot of work in Seminole Heights and the areas around there. Tracy, of course, has been running Tempest Projects. Neil's been running the Go-Be-Off Foundation. So we all kind of have worked in different areas that we need to bring together. So this effort is kind of getting all of those people into one room and then putting together a large-scale project that can put a lot of artists to work. So just a brief introduction to the Crab Devil concept and the Peninsularian. The Peninsularian is a property on 3800 North Nebraska Avenue. It's a 2-acre property we're developing that will be Tampa's first immersive art experience. So this will be a ticketed attraction, and an attraction along the lines of other things that you can go to in the area, the Children's Museum or the History Center, that kind of thing. This is designed to cater to both locals and tourists, but it's an attendance-based attraction, so we need to generate interest and we need to generate tourists coming to town to see these kinds of things. So it's in our best interest to really build up this community and herald what's going on in Tampa. I think I'll pass it to Tracy to tell you what we've been doing to date to build those things up.
Sure. So I would like to tell you what we've been doing individually first, and then tell you what we've been doing together as Crab Devil. As Devon mentioned, we are basically made up of a pretty interesting group of smaller groups. And I want to first start with the Go-Be-Off Foundation. He's here, as you heard earlier. But the Go-Be-Off Foundation has been giving local support to artists and to projects for how many years now? 13 years. So, 13 years. I know that Tempest could not have survived without that type of philanthropy. So, John and Neil, as Devon mentioned, are part of Crab Devil, and they've been doing really great programs and a lot of support in the community for a long time now. As I mentioned before, I've been running Tempest for 11 years. We have an artist residency program, we have a project space, we have a main gallery, we do classes, we have workshops, we do lectures, and we really try to accommodate the artists and make sure the artists get paid. And then Devon works, Devon doesn't work for, Devon is a co-owner of Live Work Studios. He runs it with Midulla, his wife, and Michael Mew, a good friend of ours. Crab Devil is comprised of 2 founding members of the Go-Be-Off Foundation, myself from Tempest Projects, one of the board members of Tempest Projects, a former board member of Tempest Projects, and 3 of the founders of the Brook Studios. So that's, and one brewer. We've got a beer brewer who is also a small business owner. So what we've been doing so far with Crab Devil is we did a request for proposals, and we have started building out, how many shipping containers do we have artists for, 11 or 12?
Yeah. 11
or 12 of the shipping containers that will be on site, that are the immersive experience, have artists that are basically working on their immersive environments. Those shipping containers will be configured on the north acre of land on the property, and that is the immersive art space. So these artists that we've been working with are creating designs and environments. I know I lost my sound. Give me yours. Can you hear me now? No time for tech problems, right? So we've been creating these designs and these environments with these 12 artists. There are about 5 containers that we're doing in-house that we're working on collaboratively. And in the next few months, we'll be doing another request for proposals for the remaining containers. I think we are slated for 30? 27. I'm going to say 30. What am I leaving out? That's what we've been doing so far.
So in that regard, Tracy talked a little bit about kind of the high hurdle to get over for local artists in terms of having their work purchased, especially in a public art context. And so, some of this, as we said, we need to put pressure on the city to do a better job of going out and finding those local artists and giving them their support. But also, they have their own requirements here, and usually these projects have this hurdle of like a resume that shows that you've done the project greater than, usually it's $25,000 as the minimum, sometimes it's $50,000. That's a pretty large scale project for any artist to apply for. So the question is, how do you get that first one? You've got to have one under your belt before you can start getting the others. And so what happens is we have artists coming in from out of town who have done these things in other places. We don't have artists locally who have done that. So part of this initiative at Crab Devil, every one of these container installations is a $15,000 commission for a local artist. So that's resume fodder for them to go out and say that I've done a project of this scale. And then we can kind of mentor them and help them through the process of getting into some of these calls for proposals that are happening, whether it's in our city or in other cities, to get them going in that direction. But so what we have here then is kind of an ask of all of you. It's got a few facets to it. Tracy talked a little bit about getting the city to support local artists in a more robust fashion. The other thing that can be done by any or all of you would be volunteerism for places like Tempest Projects or other arts organizations that need board members or people on their selection committees. That's how these artists get selected. There's usually a panel of 8 or 10 people sitting there around the table making these determinations. So that's another place that you can help out. Of course, collecting, as we said, part of the job of Tempest is to kind of provide the official seal of approval to people who are just getting their feet into the art world and not understanding or being, trepidatious about investing in art. And so Tempest kind of provides that role of saying, this is good, come here and look at this stuff, we've already vetted it for you. But there's, we're kind of working on making people more comfortable with that idea of investing in art, and especially investing in local art. And the last part would be to get involved with the for-profit ventures, things like Crab Devil, things, or other businesses of that nature, starting your own thing or investing in ones that are already going on. So the question is, how does this benefit everybody here? And like we talked about, arts as an economic driver in the community. There's all sorts of studies that will show you the kind of economic impact that having a robust art scene in your city will provide. And then in terms of people that are business owners and leaders in the community, we talk about employee retention or acquisition, being able to bring talent in from far instead of hemorrhaging talent to other municipalities. And then just general quality of life for you and your family in terms of the range of experiences that are available to you. So that's what we're asking of you today, is to kind of get involved in one of those respects, to champion what's going on here in the city. I think everybody knows the rich history and traditions of Tampa and can kind of speak to that and support that. And it's time that we all kind of came together and did that for the art community as well. That's it for me.
I think that's it.